Has life gotten off track? Are you looking for some inspiration to be a better dad? People say all the time, I'd die for my kids. Okay. But would you live for them? Actually live? Get yourself healthy? Make better choices? Eliminate distractions? Would you lead them more intentionally? Would you get sober? Take better care of yourself, physically and mentally. You'd only have to die once. Your kids don't need you to die for them. They need you to live. Have you thought about getting sober, but you just didn't know where to start? If so, welcome to the Domestic Dad Podcast, your go-to destination for candid discussions on journeys into sobriety, parenting, and personal growth. I'm Nick Barnett, founder of the Domestic Dad Project. I've been a dad since I was 18 years old. I'm also a trauma survivor, an alcoholic, divorced, happily remarried, hardworking, humbled by life, domestic dad. On this podcast, you'll find interviews with people who have walked that path, including myself, coaches, mentors, and pastors who can help guide you on your journey. You're going to need resources and inspiration. You can find that here. This is the community for you to lean into so you can start living life as a domestic dad. So let's grab a mop and start cleaning up the mess. Okay, Dean Feltis.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me for the Domestic Dad Podcast.
Wouldn't miss it.
Yeah, man. So I'll start this how I start all of these. Tell me where you came from. Tell me about you. What was childhood like?
Oh, wow. I grew up on a farm, a hog farm, actually, and really ignorant of a lot of things of the world, I guess, you know. And we're in our own world. We live in our own little area of prejudice, so we just live there, right? It was a great childhood. I mean, I grew up playing baseball and football and basketball, and we didn't have a whole lot of extra stuff. I'll be 60 here in about a month, so you know, when I grew up, there wasn't all the electronics and social media and YouTube and all the stuff. So we were outside playing baseball all the time. We were just either working or playing.
Wholesome. A wholesome childhood.
Pretty much. Pretty uneventful childhood. Just, I guess, you know, what back then, what I would have considered normal in my ignorance, right? Not understanding other people and their situations.
Yeah. What do you, lot to unpack there.
I know it is.
Yeah. Let's start.
Without getting into my book.
Yeah. Do you have a book?
Not yet.
Have you written one?
I'm going to.
Is it in process?
No. In my head.
We're going to get there.
I'm a really, really deep thinker, and I'm a deep processor. So it'll all be written in my head before it ever hits paper.
Yeah.
It really will. It'll be all researched and everything in my head. So
yeah. Okay. So pretty normal farm kid childhood.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not a whole lot of diversity.
None until I was 22.
Yeah. Where were you living when you were 22?
I was still living on an acreage. I'd gotten married to Michelle, and we were living on an acreage, and I was actually working at a packing plant. Followed my dad's footsteps until I went back to college after that. So yeah, that's really where I first met diversity, was working in the packing plant.
Yeah.
And I was never racist or against or for one race or gender or anything other than any other, right? It was just ignorance. I just didn't know what I didn't know. Yeah. And all I knew is what I'd seen on TV or what I'd been told or anything like that. So again, that's what forms our prejudice, without getting deeper into that subject.
We might, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Don't tease me with that. Don't tease me with that. There's a lot there to unpack. Okay. So, 22 years old, married, got kids.
Yeah. We got married when I had just graduated high school.
Yeah.
In June after I graduated. So a month after I graduated.
You were an early adopter of.
Michelle was 17, junior in high school. So we had a baby when she finished high school. So yeah, by 22, I'd been a dad for 4 years.
Yeah. Wow. I was a dad. Yeah. So it was right after high school for me. Yeah. It was like, you're going to have a baby.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to talk about being stupid. I mean, yeah, you don't know anything. A male at 18 is not even formed yet.
Yeah.
We're just not even put together yet. So
no, we need more birthdays. You just need somebody said
a lot more birthdays.
Somebody said that to me the other day. We were talking about challenges that, I think the guy was 20 something, you know what I mean? And how this guy had some challenges, and he goes, man, he just needs to have a few more birthdays.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, dude, there's not that's the best way to put that.
Yeah. And a few more challenges, right? That's how we grow.
Yeah, no, it is. Okay. So, just trying to figure out where you're at when you had kids. What kind of challenges did you have at that age?
Oh, all the normal challenges that anybody that would have a child that without any, we had no advanced education. We both had a high school diploma. But my wife went to cosmetology college after that, started her own salon. So by 22, she was full blown into her own salon and running a business, and I had gone back to school, and then I started working at a print shop as well. So for the next 12 years, I worked in a print shop. I was always a hard worker. I was always somebody who you couldn't tell me I couldn't. You say you can't, watch this, I will.
Yeah.
My mantra growing up too was not a good one. But in high school, it was, if you don't like me, blank you. It's your problem, not mine.
Yeah, that's a you problem, not a me problem.
Exactly, and that was my mantra. So it was nobody could persuade me away from what I had in my mind. And so that was not healthy, but it was me, and it was who I was. So I worked at that print shop for 12 years, and I worked up through being assistant manager and all those kind of things. So, it was just an it's been an amazing run. It's been an amazing life, to be honest.
Yeah. I know you don't love this, but when did you decide to turn your life to faith? Because I know at some point that happened for you, right?
Yeah, well, it just a little just transparency. All through high school, I was doing drugs and drinking, and I actually played football until I was a sophomore, and then get a load of this. I quit playing football so that I could actually go to football games and drink. Right.
That looks way more fun in the stands than it does down here on the field.
Hey, it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
it's a lot of work to do it, on the field. So, I was drinking pretty heavy by the time I was in high school and doing drugs and all kinds of stuff. So when I got married, I committed to my wife that I wouldn't do drugs anymore, and I didn't. Kept drinking very heavy. So I was 24 years old, and every day was, by 10 or 11 o'clock, it was feeling a little better now. And by noon, it was, wow, 3:30 is coming soon. I can get out of here and go hit the bar again. So that was kind of the cycle of my life. And so at 24, we were at a conference, and there's a guy named Dave Reaver I was just talking about. He was actually in one of the river boats in Vietnam where they were always under fire, and he took a white phosphorus grenade into the tank of he was a tank gunner. He was in the center of the boat, and it pretty much blew him up. He had white phosphorus burning in his body for 2 weeks. As they kept removing it, it kept catching on fire. As they kept every time they opened him up, and he just talked about giving his life to Christ, and it was just a flood of past regret. I mean, it was literally in a matter of minutes. I was weeping, because it was like that was my life, just a mess. I could see everything I'd done and people I'd hurt, and so by the next morning, it was amazing. As I woke up, it was like the sun was shining for the first time in my life.
After you'd heard this man's testimony?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right there. I went up, gave my life to Christ right there. But it was the next morning when I woke up, it was like the sun had actually shone for the first time. Right? And my brain had been rewired. I was thinking differently than I was before. It was a radical transformation. It was radical. It wasn't some slow thing. It was radical.
Yeah, some people have that experience and some people don't. I'm one of the ones that don't. It took me a long time to get to the point of faith that I'm at right now. Like I am 100% all in. Like, but it took me a long time. I'm like a slow learner or something. But I do think that alcohol and drugs had something to do with that. Like what do you call it? Like a convenient usage of alcohol all the time will cloud your brain. And Pastor John Fuller told me one time, he was like, yeah, man, like that's what it does. It just clouds your brain. So you can't see through the foggy glass.
There's a fog.
Yeah. And once you get through that fog and you actually realize what's going on, it's like an aha moment. And I definitely had that aha moment, but
well, God knows us, right? And you're probably more teachable than I am. You remember my mantra when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Right. So the only way for God to get a hold of me was a 2x4 upside of my head.
Yeah.
And if it hadn't been radical, I probably would have walked away. So God knows us better than anyone knows us. He knows what it takes for us to trust him. And so what it took for me was a hard slap upside the head.
Yeah.
And to tear some things out of me immediately, leave some things that I had to grow in my faith through.
Yep.
Some people think that God's going to change everything in a day, and he doesn't. He leaves some things that we can actually grow stronger in our faith and grow closer to him and trust him in instead of trusting ourselves. And that's what got us in the trouble in the first place.
Yeah. So, and you were 24 years old?
Yeah.
Wow. Man. Yeah. What I would give to go back to 24 years of age and find it and know what I know now.
Well, it's kind of humorous too, is Michelle and I used to just make fun of one of her really good friends through high school that was a Bible thumper. We used to just rip on this poor guy. In our early 20s, and and then we have this radical change and we're like, dude, I'm so sorry. He's like, hey, if that's what it took, it's good. I'm like, that's where it's real faith, right?
Yeah.
He just took it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Jesus teaches us to do.
It was just amazing because, wow. Yeah, that's how it's real.
Yeah.
It's just because of what changed in your heart, the compassion you have now, and how you can actually see who you were and who you are and who he is. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah. How did you come into contact with that guy that shared his testimony with you that really...
We were at a conference.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were at a big
He was a speaker?
Yeah. We were at a business conference. We were looking at starting a business. And so we were at a business conference, and they had a optional Sunday morning service, and you could stay for another night and go to that if you wanted to. And so we did.
Yep.
And, the rest is history.
Yeah. Cool. Wow. So what so what happened between 24 and when did you guys start OneCityUnited?
2018.
2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened in between?
Oh, a lot happened. Let's see, to make a long story short. I knew that I grew up Catholic.
Me too.
And so then immediately after that next Sunday, we went to a charismatic church. So imagine a young 20-something Catholic boy walking into a charismatic church for the first time. And what blows me away is it wasn't odd or weird. It was like, wow, so this is what it means. Wow. And I knew very shortly within months that I was being called into ministry. But I ran from it for 20 years.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that. I was like, can I share something?
Sure.
Okay. So I was raised Catholic, like basically like when I was born, they were like, okay, you're going to be Catholic, right? So I had communion, I had confirmation, I was baptized Catholic, all of those things. But in my early teens, one of the guys in my neighborhood, he was awesome. He's like, still to this day, I would call him one of the best friends I've ever had in my entire life. And there was kind of a clique of us, right? So like this childhood camaraderie, we'd go play ball together in the summer. On Saturdays, we'd stay the night at his house. Like it was like the neighborhood would stay the night at this guy's house. You know what I mean? He had a brother, and we were all tight. But his dad was a reverend at a Foursquare Baptist church. And if you stayed the night on Saturday, you had to go to church on Sunday. So here's me. Every week I go to Catholic Mass on Friday, right? Prepare for Catholic Mass on the weeks that our classroom was designated to be the class that hosted the Mass, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody was going to serve, somebody was going to read the prayers and all of that. And then on Sunday morning, I went to
Foursquare Church.
Yeah, Foursquare Baptist Church, and it was awesome. Like, and I still in my head, like they had the choir, they had there was a loud message. It was very different. But I had both of those like opposite ends of the spectrum as a kid.
Yeah,
and I just really loved it. I really did. I loved it, and I knew that I would fall somewhere in the middle at some point. I knew I wasn't gonna. I knew very early on that I wasn't going to go to mass every Sunday. I knew that if I could avoid it, I would. I knew that, singing and watching other people be really excited for God while worshiping was cool, but I was very much geared as a child to like be reclusive as a worshiper. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting that you said like you had a very similar experience.
Yeah. It's not a bad experience. It just is what it is. Right.
Yeah.
And, my parents still very strong Catholics, awesome people. It's a really amazing thing because fast forward 20 years and when I finally accepted my call to ministry and to be a pastor and all that, I was really afraid to tell my parents, because obviously I wasn't going to be a priest. I had a 17-year-old wife with a baby, so that wasn't going to happen. But the most beautiful thing in the world is when I told them, my mom breaks into tears and she said, that's awesome. To have their support and to have them with me in that was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a dramatic life change too.
They love God.
Yeah.
And they're just really solid people.
Yeah. Are your parents still around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In their 80s. Yeah. That was an interesting path, honestly. See, and like I told you, God doesn't play with me. He doesn't make requests. He doesn't ask me questions. He tells me how it's going to be. And after I ran for 20 years, I was at church on Sunday, and I was sitting there, and he literally physically grabbed my heart and just squeezed it. And I just, I felt like a heart attack, but I knew it wasn't. I knew what it was. And so I continued to question God for 3 days and argue with God for 3 days. And the whole time, this pressure in my heart, he's just like, I'm not letting go until you say yes. And so I remember my last argument with God was, but God, I'm not even a type A personality. And guess his response? It was, but I am. Right?
I don't call the qualified. I qualify the called.
Dual meaning. He says, I am. And what does he tell me? I am.
Yeah.
So at that point, I just said, that's right. All I have to do is be me, and you are who you are. And it's not about me anyway. So at the point that I said,
take your hands off the wheel.
Yes,
Dean.
Lord, whatever it is you want, I'll do it. You just tell me and I'll go. At that point, the pressure was gone. Boom. Instantly gone. But then I had to tell Michelle.
Yeah. How'd that go?
She said, it's about time you figured it out. Then I was really screwed, right? Because then I was like, now I got to do this thing. If she just would have argued, I possibly could have weaseled out of this thing, But yeah,
knowing Michelle,
trying to put it on your wife, right? It's like you just pile it on and go, oh, come on, we're going to lose everything. Don't you know? We're going to lose the house. We're going to lose the cars. We're going to have to be, all that stuff. But through the 15 years of ministry that we did, pastoral ministry, God just, we never made enough money to make it, but we always had enough money to make it.
Yeah.
It was just common. God did dozens and dozens and dozens and hundreds of miraculous things in our lives and in people's lives around us that were just impossible things. We could spend weeks talking about that.
Yeah. Well, bring me up to when you said, all right, in 2018, this is what we're going to do. And this is why we're going to do it.
Yeah. We were, through all our years of ministry, we were always really working hard to connect churches together. That churches would really collaborate, work together, because we all have a different focus, as you know. Every church has a different target. God gives every church a different calling and a different target of people that they're supposed to be reaching. We're always trying to get churches to work together to be able to really impact people's lives from multiple areas and multiple directions and multiple focuses, as well as spiritually, right? We struggled to get that done. We found roadblocks everywhere we went. So through all our years of ministry, we worked with a lot of people that were returning from incarceration, that were homeless, that were coming through addiction and recovery.
Yeah.
Single moms. We worked. That was our ministry. So in 2016 or 17, we just started getting a group of people together that believed the way that we did and just said, we have got to, through all our years of kids programs, we've seen kids just really struggling, but we also saw their parents were struggling as well. So we said we have got to find a way that we can reach parents as well. And we have got to find a way to get churches involved and working together. So we kind of backdoored the whole thing and said, if we can start a nonprofit, churches can work together and not even know they're working together.
Right.
Because they can partner with us and work with us, and they'll be working together and impacting people's lives the way we wanted to do while we were in ministry. So in it must have been 2018, we met a group from Kalamazoo, Michigan called Urban Alliance that was running a program called Momentum that was an employment program. And early on, I told them, not interested in another program. But we've researched so many programs. I don't even want to hear about another program. And Brian Parsons was their director at that time. And he said, no, you don't understand. You gotta see what we do. It's different. And I was like, everybody says that. He's like, no, you really got to come up and see what we do. And it was really awesome because as we got up there and spent 3 days with them, everything was about relationship. Everything was about, it wasn't necessarily an employment program. It was, we need to pour into people's lives so they can see themselves differently.
Yeah.
Because when they see themselves differently and understand how powerful and valuable and how much talent they have, and that they can thrive in life no matter what anybody's told them, things change. And so we started on that path, and we actually piloted that program from Kalamazoo, Michigan into Waterloo through OneCityUnited, and it's called Momentum. And we've seen so many people's lives that have been impacted so strongly. And the beauty is watching, someone go from a place of where they're living in urgency every day, to where they see themselves as maybe a felon or a druggie or whatever society has told them, or their family has told them, or the media has told them, or social media has condemned them in, or whatever they've heard and they believed, to watch that start to drift away and watch them see themselves in the mirror in a totally different way. And then to get a quality career and begin to thrive. And it's just unbelievable.
One of the things that really attracted me to your program, and I don't know if attract is the right word, but really said, oh, that makes so much sense, is aligning passion with purpose. And there's a Kanye West lyric that plays in my head. It goes, everything I'm not makes me everything I am. And that kind of plays into the whole passion and purpose thing, right? When you find someone who's, to your point, living in urgency, and they're like this great human being, this wonderful human being, but they're clouded by, shame and guilt, that addiction or recovery or incarceration and all the things that have built barriers in their life to find their true self. They're dealing with that every day, and they're living in urgency because they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Right. And they don't know that there's this great, really cool round hole or great square peg or square hole that they can fit themselves into. And they're perfect for it. They're perfect for it.
That's the thing people don't understand, is we're all unique, right?
Right.
They're not all round holes. They're not all square holes. Some are octagons. Everybody is different, with different past, different experiences, and different plans for their future, and different hopes and different dreams.
Yeah.
Somebody's living in urgency, as many times we see, is they've stopped hoping because they've been trying to fit that octagonal peg through a square hole that everybody's told them they need to fit it through for so long, instead of cutting the whole octagon so they can fit and showing them how they fit, and they can prosper and they can fit through that hole. We don't do that in society. We tend to create the square hole, say everybody has to go through this, and if you don't, you're a mess.
Yeah,
and we're done with you,
and we're going to discard you.
Yeah,
and then they're back to urgency again. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But you have so much good inside of you. You're this beautiful, wonderful person. Let's find that.
That's right.
What you're not makes you more valuable to what you are. I don't know. So I've always loved that about your guys' program, and saying, hey, we're going to align what you're passionate about with what your purpose is. We're going to find you the career that your personality, that your skill set fits into, so you can feel valuable. I don't know.
And creating that longevity, and creating that that opportunity to learn what it means to change, to learn what it means to struggle through things you don't want to do, so you can do what you do want to do.
Right.
It's I tell people every day, hey, you just have to do what you don't want to do until you don't have to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to start their own business or start at this high level or do this. Sometimes you just got to do what you don't want to do until you don't have to do it anymore.
You got to do the work.
You're going to have to go to work, and maybe in a factory for 2 or 3 years. You can put some bank aside, and then you can do what you want to do. But you're going to have to go through the process first. You have to go through the process. You just can't expect to start where you have dreamed you might start one day.
Yeah. Yeah. to your wife's point that she makes all the time, you got to trust the process.
That's right.
You got to trust it. Momentum. So that's where you found it, Kalamazoo.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about a 6-year history of just success. And they really started in the gang sector because one of their original founders of the program was one of the head gang guys up there, and he got saved and changed his life. And his big struggle was there's so many of my buddies that are in gangs that nobody will hire them because of the tats, because of their background, because of the arrest record and their gang affiliations. So employers won't hire them. What can we do? What can we do so that employers can see there's a lot of value in this person, not just their past, but who they are now and who they want to be. Let's stop looking at who they were. Let's start looking at who they are now and who they can be in the future and who they're striving to be.
Help them transform.
And let's go there, right? Let's partner with them and journey with them and help them see that fulfillment of who they want to be instead of looking at their past all the time and just putting people in that box. So that was the beauty of it. And that's what really, really grabbed me, is because that's the way I've always believed, right? We always believe people can change. Anybody can change.
Yeah.
We've read the stories. We've seen the stories. We know. If you're into the Bible, Paul, look at Paul. He was Saul, and it didn't take much for him to change. Just getting knocked off his horse and a lightning bolt and blind. And I can relate, right? But everybody can change. There's no one in this that can breathe in oxygen and blowing out CO2 that can't change. There's not.
Cool. Okay. So what are some of the biggest, so this is the Domestic Dad podcast, and that's all about breaking the stigma. I mean, our mission is to really break the stigma around dads reaching out for help so they can become better fathers and provide a better life for their children. Right. So being a dad. So I'm sure that you guys see a lot of dads.
Oh, absolutely.
Come through your doors. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you see for dads today?
More than 80% of the people that come through our program have a past record of incarceration, justice impacted, and more than 80% have been through addiction in recovery.
Yeah.
Those are major things. Incarceration of dads, and generationally, many times uncles, brothers, it's devastating. You have a child who's 2 years old and you go to prison and you're there for 5 years and you come back and now your child is 7 or 8. They remember your face, but they don't know you. And you don't know them, and you've missed 5 years of their life. The guilt, the shame, and not releasing that turns into bitterness, turns into a root of bitterness, which starts to impact, roots grow out and they impact everything around them. So roots of bitterness start to show up, and people just don't know what to do. They don't know how to reclaim those lost years, and they think they have to try to reclaim them instead of starting where they're at. So I guess to me, it's really the cycle of incarceration, especially in this city. We're one of the most punitive counties in the country. So it's really difficult to watch guys struggle with that, because at some point they just give up, right? They just end up walking away because they just don't know how to deal with it. They're not getting the help. I know. I really appreciate the level of support that's there for dads now. That and I know it's not enough, but
not even close. But
compared to when I was a kid, compared to when I was growing up, there was nothing. Suck it up, buttercup, go take care of business. And there was no help. It was be a man. That whole thing. And there's little truth in that. You got to suck it up sometimes, right? But
sure.
But at the end of the day, if you don't know how to navigate it, and you don't know what to do, and you don't know how to get rid of that guilt and that shame, and you don't know how to get back into your child's life without them resenting you, it's a tough road, and it's not impossible, but without someone journeying with you in that process, it's lonely, very lonely. And because many times people around you haven't experienced what you've experienced, so they don't have any words of wisdom for you.
Right.
So what do you do? Where do you go?
People will often stand there and go, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And it's just like, and then that's where the conversation ends. But there's so much more to unpack. I'm glad you brought up shame and guilt. I don't know if I've ever done this, but like I'd like to define that a little bit. Those two things. I think shame comes from the devil himself. And I think that you can turn shame into guilt, and then you can take guilt to God. And you can ask for forgiveness for guilt, for things that you feel guilty for. Right. But shame, that just sits in a place where it's just eternally bad. There's no like, and if you don't turn it into guilt and deal with it, it's just going to sit on you, and it's going to sit in that, like the proverbial shame bucket, if you will. And then anytime somebody kicks that bucket, what spills out? All the things that created all that shame, a victim mentality.
See, yeah, I guess I wouldn't argue with that, although I see it differently. I see it almost circular. I see, initially when you do something or don't do something, shame shows up. And then shame that's prolonged becomes guilt. And then guilt that's not dealt with turns to destruction.
Yeah.
And that destruction that's happening in your life and areas of your life turns back into shame, because you look at it and you say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been doing this for this long this way. And then it turns into guilt. And it's circular. It's circular. It's a cycle that continues to just perpetuate itself on and on and on and on. And as you add more areas and that bucket gets more full all the time, the weight of it becomes unbearable. Yeah.
You can't even lift it. I mean, there's not even a chance. It's like going up something and going like that and just being completely stuck, and then you're stuck.
And that's honestly, we're not social workers and we're not counselors, but through Momentum, it's a lot of what we do. We unpack a lot of that, and it's really important to come face to face with the things you've done, to own them, to say, yeah, I did do those things. But if we let those define our future, then we're stuck.
Yeah. Like
we can't stay where we are. We have to go forward. Whether we're going forward or we're going backwards, there is no, I like it just the way it is. Nothing ever stays the same. Everything's always changing, and either changing forward or changing backwards. And we have to, very consciously, with purpose and focus, look at our own lives and say, yep, that's what I did. That's not who I am.
Right.
Right. That's the big difference, is to help people see, because you did this thing, that's not who you are.
Right. You got to clean up the mess.
And I've preached for years, that people are never the enemy. The enemy is always the enemy. He's the one who influences. He's the one who causes things. He's the one who makes bad things happen. And you can't attach that to people. It's not their fault. It's his fault. Stop treating people as if they're your enemy. He is the enemy.
Right.
And
I think that's a huge barrier for a lot of people, because, I'll just speak from experience here. In my alcoholism and addiction, I have a lot of shameful moments, a lot of things that I can look back on and say, oh, shame on you, Nick, but in the process of going through some of that stuff, I've realized that those things happened to me because of the enemy, right? Because of all the self-doubt, because of lying, because of just whatever it was that created those instances, if you will, that I'm ashamed, that old me is ashamed of. Mm-hmm. And until you can confront them and deal with them and clean up that mess, if you will, you're going to live with it, And once you confront it, acknowledge it, say it, and really process it, then you can move forward in this, and it's almost empowering to say that used to be me, and here I am today, and look at the journey from here to there.
And I really think that, too many times we want all those memories and those feelings to go away. And I think God leaves them with a purpose.
Yeah.
I remember, I'd been a pastor probably 4 or 5 years, and I was starting to run into people I knew from my past. They'd say, hey, what are you doing now? And I'd tell them, and they'd give me this look of disgust, almost just disdain, and say, I knew God wasn't real, because they knew me from my past. Man, those hurt. Right. I'll talk about shame, guilt, of all the things I'd done and people I'd run around with and done crazy, stupid things with.
Yeah.
And now, because of that in my past, they were looking at everything differently, as if I knew God wasn't real, because there's no way you're a pastor, And so I think that was left for a reason. That was left to draw me closer to God, to understand that I don't save anybody. It's not my job. My job is to do what God's called me to do and trust him and let the Holy Spirit do what he does. Last time I checked, the Holy Spirit's job description is not on Indeed. He's not taking applications to be replaced. So we need to stop trying to replace him. Let him do what he does and just do what we're called to do.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, he's not looking.
No, he's not looking to be replaced.
No.
He's not saying, okay, I'm done. I've done my thing. I'm done. Now, can you give something on Indeed and let's get me replaced here so I can go hang out on the beach, pick up shells?
No, he's going to stay there. Yeah.
And I guess one of the, just a word of wisdom for people, and that is we get asked all the time, and this is not to pat ourselves in the back or anything. This is just for your life. And that is that I just got asked in an interview the other day where somebody said, why do you guys do what you do? I mean, seriously, you've been doing this for 20 years. Why do you do what you do? And I said, it's not because it's not what we do. It's who we are. So if you can't be doing every day in your life who you are, then you're never going to have enough passion for it to complete it and to follow through and do what God's called you to do. It has to truly become who you are. And so we don't go to work every day. We just go and do who we are every day. We go fulfill our purpose every day.
Oh, I love that.
Every day, you know, too many people show up and do their job. I've tried to teach people for years that when you go to work every day, you're in full-time ministry. It's not like you have a job and then you can come home and do ministry. God has given you full-time ministry every single day, and you need to use it as that.
One of the most things that hit me the hardest was somebody I look to as a mentor and really look up to. He was like, "Hey, Nick," he goes, "Like you talk about Domestic Dad Project and how you felt called to do it and all this stuff." And I say, yeah, man. I do. He goes, "How much more would you give it if you knew it's what God wanted you to do?" And I was like, man, like everything, I suppose, like everything. And that's a humbling thought.
So why aren't you doing that now?
Like how there's so many people in the world that are they and aligning passion with purpose is a huge part of like fixing the problem here. But so many people are showing up to be an employee.
Yeah.
And stop being an employee and do what you're passionate about, and you'll live a much more fulfilling life.
Well, because you're willing to do what's uncomfortable when it's who you are.
Yeah.
You don't set up the guidelines by what you enjoy or what you're comfortable with. Your guidelines are, this is who I am. So whatever comes at me, I do. And that's another huge life lesson is we can't live where it's comfortable. We always have to be on the edge of our uncomfortable life so that we can actually stretch and grow. You cannot live in your passion and work in your passion if you're not growing. You can't live in your passion if you're living in what's comfortable, because you start to separate yourself very quickly from all the processes and all the people, because you're not growing, you're not stretching, it's not uncomfortable. You get very comfortable with yourself and you think you can do it on your own, and it becomes just gliding through life.
Yeah.
And I see so many people that are just coasting.
Yeah. 10 years later, you're like,
yeah,
I haven't lived the last decade without purpose.
I haven't learned anything. I haven't stepped out into something I've never experienced. I haven't, so many people are, you're always told and taught in leadership and in sales and everything else, working where your strengths are. You can mess with your weaknesses a little bit, but don't work there. That's not who you work in your strengths. I'm going to say, yeah, it's important to work in your strengths, but you better be working on your weaknesses too. You better be experiencing new things, because then you can also see how other people live. You can understand people better.
Yeah.
You can't understand people if you don't understand them. So the only way to understand them is do the uncomfortable things and get in uncomfortable situations to have uncomfortable experiences to where it makes sense.
Yeah. Man, I love it. I love it. This is why you are one of my mentors, man, because you're like, you get it. You get it.
And with kids, you're talking dads and kids, right?
Yeah.
Here's another word of advice. I'm older. There ain't many hills that we're dying on with your kids.
Yeah.
Stop making everything such a big deal. Stop making everything a hill we're dying on. Seriously. I told my son, when your granddaughter's, it ain't going to kill her, right? It's not going to kill her to do this thing. Let her enjoy. Let her experience. Let her understand. Your kids are just trying to be like you.
Yeah.
They see you go grocery shopping and come home and put the groceries. They want to help you put the groceries away. Yeah, but they'll mess them up and put them in the wrong place.
Just let them do it.
So what? It's not a hill we're dying on. Quit trying to do that. Let your kids learn how to be an adult and let them learn to be like you. Hopefully you're a good example for that.
Yeah.
But also,
that's the point, right?
But when you're not, which we aren't always good examples, that's when we can say, be transparent and real with your kids. I messed up. But see, back in my day,
you mean like repair, like actually repair it?
Yeah. You didn't do that back in my day.
No,
you never let your kids know you're fallible.
In the facade that creates inside of us. Oh, I've dealt with that for such a long time, and I'm not saying that my parents are guilty of that. I'm just saying that in my head, when I was a young man, I thought I needed to die on every hill. And I was a parent. I'm a parent from the time I'm 18, 19 years old, right? My oldest is 21. So I had to, I died on every hill, right? Yeah. Like, because I said so, or because I could do it. And how I would engage with people is because I said so, right? If you don't like it, screw you. To your point about how you were back in high school, right? There's so many of those moments. And it's like, man, if I had found my faith earlier, and been living like Jesus wanted me to live a lot earlier in life, and would accept and be more accepting of the fact that I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? That I'm a broken man and the God made me that way. And through him, I can find, a better path in life. I would have been so much further ahead.
And some of it is, you're forcing your kids to experience and grow. I don't remember how old my daughter was, but I remember pulling up in front of our little local country grocery store. And I gave her a few dollars and said, go get a loaf of bread. She was probably 5 or 6, but we knew everybody in town. So I wasn't worried about that. And she looked at me with this terror in her eyes. And I said, just go get some bread. And so she walks in and she said, what kind should I get? I said, whatever, just get a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
So she goes in and she comes out beaming. I mean, beaming. Now she bought the most expensive loaf of bread they had, whatever. But that's not a hill we're dying on.
Right.
Right. She was so proud of herself because she had done this thing that she was terrified of. But it forced her to understand the things that she can do in her life to stop limiting herself. And I would allow her to experience that. We didn't do that with our first. Yeah. Right. We learn as we go. And as grandparents, we tend to know a little more than we know as parents. So, but let your kids experience things. Sometimes you have to force them to experience things. But it will pay huge dividends.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an awesome lesson. That's an awesome lesson for every single dad out there. That's good. Hey, what's your favorite part about being a dad? Oh, grandpa at this point.
Yeah. Grandpa for sure. Just the perspective, right now in my life, it's a perspective, and being able to pour into other dads, just having conversations about how important it is to set expectations and hold kids accountable, in a very loving way. There's 2 ways to say everything, you can look at somebody and say, you fell short, or you can say, how can we do this better?
Yeah.
Right. There's 2 ways to say everything. So always measure what you say, measure your words. Words are powerful. Words created everything in this universe. Know that words are powerful, and words can either destroy or words can equip and build. And we need to be people that build. So you need to build your kids. You need to say things in a way that will build them and not tear them down, because all of society is going to tear them down. And social media, as it gets stronger and stronger, it's going to tear them apart. So we need to build them with our words. We need to build them with our actions. And have those 2 meet together.
Instill confidence and the feeling that they're enough. And I think that's such an important thing. I haven't always done that.
No, nor have I.
And I have struggled with that. I have struggled from being the advice dad, the one who says, hey, don't do that. What you're doing is wrong. And that has an impact. Over time, if you wear that kid down on all the things that he does wrong and why he's doing them wrong, he's going to think that he's wrong, or she's going to think that she's wrong. And what kind of a future does that, like, what kind of a mind state does that create? Like, I'm just naturally wrong.
It's a God complex.
Yes, it is.
Is what it is.
Oh.
Ultimately, we want the kid to have to come back to us to get the right answers. Unfortunately, we see that many times in churches as well, right? You make things enough convoluted so people have to come to you for the answer instead of training them up in a way that they can find their own answers and partner with you in the answer. And I think that's with kids. If we're always telling them what to do and when to do it and how to do it, with who to do it, and not allowing them to be involved in the conversation and their own journey in life and maturing, then we're going to have 25-year-old kids that don't know how to live.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most powerful things I did for my kids is when they hit 18, I said, no more free advice. You want my advice, you got to ask. And literally, I watched them do some crazy things that weren't good. But I kept my mouth shut because it's like, no, if you want my advice, you got to ask. Each one of my kids has called me back in their 20s and said, Dad, what do you think about, what would you do if this was you? Then they're ready to receive it, right? I gave them too much advice all through their whole life. The last thing I want to do is hear one more piece of advice from their old man who didn't know squat.
Yeah.
But as they mature and they live and they go, wow, the old man did know something, you know, he did. But then they're ready to receive it. You can't pound on a kid and try to give them advice when they're not ready to receive it. They have to want to receive what you have to say. And it's really important. And I found that very interesting because they still call sometimes and say, what do you think? You know, my oldest is 40.
Yeah. My oldest is 21. And from time to time, he'll call me. If he knows I'm proficient at something that he's trying to accomplish, he'll call me and ask me for that advice. And
they call more and more as long as you don't push and say, you know, and this other thing you're doing, don't be doing that.
Yeah.
They're not calling you back.
Yeah.
Because they know already. They know they messed it up. Why do we think we have to pile on and tell them? They know. They already know, you know? It doesn't take a 4-year-old knows many times and we just pile on, you know? It's like there's two ways to say everything. Find a way to build them instead of tear them down. All right,
since we're here, I'm going to ask you for some advice. I've got a 4-year-old that will not go to bed, and he fights me every single night. What do I do about that?
Does he want to sleep in your bed or what?
No, he just wants to talk every night.
Again,
I can't stay up all night talking to him.
Nope. Expectations, accountability. I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
It's different for every kid.
Yeah.
It's literally expectations and accountability. It's like, no, you need to go to bed now, or this will be the consequence. And then you have to follow through on the consequence. You can't say, you're never going to watch TV ever in your life again. You know? Or you got to follow through on that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's, you know, you don't want that smoke. You don't want a kid without a TV.
No, but you say, this is what it's going to cost you if you don't.
Yeah.
A 4-year-old can understand that. They're very perceptive, and they've understood human behavior. We don't give kids enough credit. A 4-year-old, they understand. They know which one of their parents will allow them to do certain things that the other one won't. They work to play that against. They know who to go to when they want this or want that. Or if they've done something wrong, they know which parent to go to that's going to give them forgiveness quicker. Don't kid yourself. They know what's going on. They are
so intelligent.
So not going to bed when you're 4, he knows what he's doing.
I know.
He knows what he's doing.
You know what my problem is I waited too long in between my kids to remember the steps. My oldest is 21, and that was 21 years ago. My middle is 12, and now Jamie is 4. So it's like I got to remember all the steps in between. But it takes a decade.
You got to get creative.
Yeah.
One of our kids, every night, like at midnight, would sneak into our room and get in our bed.
Yeah, I had one of those.
You know, and I was like, you know, you want to get upset. They just want to be close to you. I get that. So what we did is I put a blanket and a pillow on the floor and said, you can sleep in our room anytime you want, but you're going to sleep right there.
Yeah.
Don't get in our bed because I'm going to toss you out. You want to be in our, that's fine. You can sleep on the floor all day long.
Yeah.
About 2 nights of that, they're back in their own bed. Didn't come in our room again. You know, this
floor is nowhere near as comfortable as my mattress.
You know what I mean? You got to get creative.
Yeah.
And it's not a hill we're dying on. It's they don't hate you, and that's why they're coming in to sleep in bed with you.
Yeah.
They don't hate you. That's why they're not going to bed. They're trying to be like you. You still have later than they do.
Yeah.
They're trying to be like you.
Exactly. They just got FOMO, man. They just got FOMO. They don't want to miss out on anything cool.
They just want to be like you.
And with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Creativity, and you can make things fun, that probably aren't fun. I've set a lot of expectations and accountability for kids. Here's your chores. I'll pay you $20 a week to do these chores. If you don't do them, you owe me $20.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because then they're like, but no, because if you're not going to do it, then I got to do it. I deserve to get paid. So, you told me you'd do it. You agreed to it. I actually even had a written agreement with one of them.
You did?
Yeah, and didn't get all of them done. Didn't do one thing they were supposed to do. And I said, that's $20 you owe me. Well, no, because the agreement was $20, and so you owe me $20. So you had to work the next week for nothing. It's like expectations, accountability. You're teaching and training your kids, and it's not harsh. It's not wrong.
Conflict comes from unmet expectations every single time.
Expectations, accountability. That's how we live.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not setting the expectation and holding people accountable to what you set the expectation, as long as it's a reasonable expectation. Somebody asked me one day, so what's a reasonable expectation for a kid? I said, it depends how old they are, or what personality type they are. Or what. There's a lot of factors, right? You know your kid. You know what they're able to do and not do, and how they think, and all those things. Set reasonable expectations.
Yeah,
reasonable. Not, I want you to do calculus. You're 5. And it's not reasonable.
Yeah. No, you're right. Hey, where do you fall in with kids and social media? Good thing, bad thing?
Bad thing for me personally. Quite honestly, social media is nothing more than us setting up a shrine or a temple to ourselves.
Yeah.
We set up a temple or a shrine. We say, come worship me. And if you don't, then you're not welcome here. And you cut them out of your life. You only listen to people that agree with you. You only listen to people they'll lift you up. And you don't want to hear anything except for you're right.
Yeah, that's where the dopamine from social media comes from. Is I like that, I love that.
That's where it's tough for kids that are undeveloped minds and emotions and everything else, because they start to believe that everyone should agree with them.
Yeah,
and they're never challenged. And that's, how do we break prejudice? It's challenged, right?
Yeah, we
challenge our own prejudice, and that's how it gets disrupted, and we see things in a new way. So I think it's very destructive. I think it causes a lot of anxiety. When you can get on a social media platform and put a filter on so you look different, so everybody sees you differently. What are we doing?
You're just promoting fakeness.
Yeah, you're promoting it, and you're promoting. It's more important who you project you are than who you really are. And it's all about projection.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was one of the points that I wanted to make with this whole podcast was like, let's stop saying that we're so great and have some humility and talk about what we did to clean up our messes. That was the whole point. I had a lot of messes to clean up. I've got so many messes, and some of them I haven't even touched yet because they're bad.
Right. Some of them you still think about, and it still turns your stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's life.
So yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Life happens, and it continues to happen. Challenges continue to happen. It doesn't matter what's happened in your life. It's going to continue to happen. It doesn't matter if you follow Jesus. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim. It doesn't matter if you're. None of that matters. Life is going to continue to happen. The question is not, what's going to, is it going to happen? The question is, how are you going to deal with things when they do?
Yeah.
How are you going to respond?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What's in your cup, man? What's in your cup?
Little mocha.
Yeah. A little coffee.
Little mocha. I put a little chocolate in it. I don't ever do that, but I did today.
Yeah.
We were out of coffee at home, so.
Yep. No, have you heard, so what's in your cup? Have you heard that whole analogy before? I'm going to find it for you.
What, is it a whole personality test? No. About what's in their cup?
It's just something I wrote down one time. It goes like this. It says, what's in your cup? You're holding a cup of coffee and someone accidentally bumps into you, causing you to spill it everywhere. Why'd you spill the coffee? Because someone bumped into me. Wrong answer. You spilled coffee because there was coffee in your cup. If there had been tea in your cup, you would have spilled tea. Whatever is inside of the cup is what spills out. So when life shakes you up, whatever's inside will come out. It's easy to pretend everything's fine until you're shaken. So we have to ask ourselves, what's in my cup? When life gets tough, what spills over? Joy, gratitude, peace, humility, or anger, bitterness, and a victim mentality. A tendency to quit. Remember, life gives you the cup. You choose what to fill it with.
That's great. And some will say, why don't you just put a lid on the cup? Right? But that's not the answer. Because then who you are can never be seen and can never spill out and can never impact anybody else's life. So the answer is not a lid on the cup. The answer is to allow it to spill.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Oh, man.
Yeah. I'm sitting here looking at mine going, I've got a lid. Mine won't spill. Is that good or bad?
Yeah, but there's still stuff inside of it.
There is. And it's going to continue to stay there until,
it gets hit so hard that the cup comes, or the lid comes off. And then make sure that what does spill out is kindness.
So I like your analogy, but
yeah,
I had to.
Yeah, I love your bolt-on.
How my brain works.
I love that. Yeah, you are a deep, purposeful thinker, aren't you?
My brain works differently. As you talk, I see videos.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally as you're talking, videos are blowing through my brain that are corresponding to what you're saying.
Oh, it's so interesting.
It is. And I used to think everybody was like that until I explained it to somebody and they said, you what? And I started asking people and they're like, you what? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a freak. You know, it's really weird because that's normal to me.
Yeah. There's a big machine working in there.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just really strange, but that's why when you were talking about that, that's what I saw. I saw a cup with a lid on it that nothing could get out.
That's good. I love the bolt onto that. Don't put a lid on it. Let it spill out, but make sure it's good.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't get burned by it.
Yep. Cool, man. Well, I don't have anything else. Anything else you want to close with?
No, I'm good.
All right.
I'm good. This is good.
Me too, man. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right on. All right.
All right.